Welcome to 5 Minutes with Andy. Once a month, Virtual Inc.'s CEO, Andy Freed, will be offering you tips, tricks, and insights into leadership, management, and business skills. In this episode, Andy welcomes Greg Kohn, our Chief Growth Officer, and Jay Vogt, an organizational development consultant. Jay gives us tips on how to facilitate Zoom meetings and how to strategically plan. To tell you more, here's Andy Freed.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to 5 Minutes with Andy. I'm glad to be joined in my attic today with two guests, Greg Kohn. Hey, Greg.
Hey, Andy. How you doing?
And Jay Vogt. Jay and Greg, thanks so much for joining. Greg, I know some folks have talked to you before. Greg is our Chief Growth Officer, but Jay, you're new to the attic, so can you introduce yourself?
I'm loving the attic here. Andy, thanks for the invite. I'm an organizational development consultant. My practice name is Peoplesworth. My name is Jay Vogt, and I've been doing this forever and a day.
Excellent. So, well, you've been doing. I got to say, the last year has felt like forever and a day. So things have changed a little bit in the last year, and I know the two of you drive a lot of strategic planning sessions, and so often that's sitting in a room with folks and hammering out where an organization needs to go. How is that working when we work in a remote environment? Jay, I'll let you lead off.
Well, I love facilitating groups. It's really one of the reasons why I'm on this planet. And last spring, I had to imagine a future where I might never do that again. And it was just heartbreaking. That said, I've discovered virtual tools that are really compelling, surprisingly so. And the task for me is to find a tool that not only allows groups to engage and make decisions, but also to do so at scale with potentially lots of different stakeholders coming. So I had to do a big deep dive into what the tools were and which ones might serve me. And I found one that has become my kind of go-to online platform. So I'm still facilitating live groups by Zoom, but instead of starting cold, we've done a whole bunch of online work up front to kind of prepare the ground, if you will. And that combination has turned out to be surprisingly productive and enjoyable for both me and my clients.
So, Greg, I know the pandemic has kept you away from the Newark airport, though I'm sure you can go there just recreationally to hang out in the terminals every now and again. But beyond that, as an upside, what are some of the positives you've seen on managing strategic planning sessions remotely?
Yeah, just on the first point, I do try to go up to the airport a couple times a month just to ride the monorail, because that's what I really miss the most. Andy, just as a backdrop and how, Jay and I landed on this podcast together, we have always done lots of strategic planning for our clients and even to outside organizations. And as Jay noted, he and his firm do the same for a very different set of clients with different organizational focus. But as the pandemic came to light, we both started to trade notes of how is this impacting your ability to do what you do and vice versa on our side. And, at the end of the day, even though they weren't coming together, our clients still wanted to do strategic planning. And it was, in many cases, almost more necessary for them to do it because the pandemic and its financial impacts, et cetera, were forcing them to adjust their business models or even determine, how they could proceed into their future and remain viable and sustainable. So in a way, all of the realities of the past year have put even more onus on the need and importance of strategic planning and our work as facilitators, and as Jay noted, the ability to tap into a whole new arsenal of tools and techniques to be able to support those processes in our current state, I think will stay with us for a while.
So Jay, you said you were put on this earth to facilitate, but come on, it's just a Zoom call. Does a video call need a facilitator?
A video call does need a facilitator, in my experience, if there's a good number of folks on that call. A facilitator will start by saying, how do we get the most out of this meeting? And that prep work that I mentioned is one of the game-changing ways to do that. But when you get the group together, if it's a good-sized group, you still have the opportunity to use breakouts and and get people in smaller groups where they can have more intimate conversations. That need to connect in a more intimate way has not changed at all. It's probably, we feel it's stronger. So, and then when you've got the input from these different groups, you have to kind of weave it back together again. Somebody's got to be recording. So there's still a lot of functions that that third party can provide that add a lot of value.
Andy, I'd add a bit of a metaphor to what Jay said, and it gets back to his earlier point about, how we're both using a variety of different technologies to aid the planning process. When we bring groups into a Zoom call, that's almost like the equivalent of, seeing a performing artist finally come onto the stage. In reality, that's a very small snippet of the entire process. You can imagine, for a performing artist, there's the roadies that, lug the gear from site to site, and then they have to set it up, and you have dry runs and rehearsals and, all the concession and vending elements and all of that. And what we've been able to do is a lot of that background work using technologies and collaboration tools and decision tools and whatnot, so that we use our time on Zoom calls where we're bringing everyone together at the same time really smartly, and to drive the most impact possible, because we all have Zoom fatigue, and there's just a reality of how much or how little you can get done when everyone's together as a little box on the screen.
Well, that's great, Greg. Thanks so much for that. And in the spirit of Zoom fatigue, we won't keep people on this podcast too long. But I know that the two of you are joining us again in April for a webinar. We'll be talking more about this topic.
Absolutely. We want to share how we've been rethinking both how we relate to time and process in the virtual world, what some of the ways we've learned to foster participation in the virtual world, what some of the new tools and technologies are that we're enamored with, that we're getting value from, and just, how strategic planning has changed and really transformed in this new era, and what that can do for us.
That's great. That's something to look forward to. Well, the information for that webinar is on your screen. Hope that you'll take a moment and register for it, and join us back here in April with a little bit more of strategic planning with Greg and Jay. Greg and Jay, thanks so much for being in the attic today.
Thanks a lot, Andy.
Thanks for the invite.